Across Southeast Asia can be heard the stories of great kings and queens, of prosperous peoples, the heights they reached, and most inevitably, their downfalls. For many, this would be the start of European colonization, a long period of exploitation that threatened to erase native cultural identities. Now, as we continue to pick up the pieces of our forgotten pasts, we need to think carefully about how we paint a clear and accurate picture of our ancient history.
Assalamu alaikum, it's Nas. I'm here to give you a quick introduction to today's Moro Minutes, Tarsilas, Khutbahs, and Kitabs.
These three are some of the principal sources that scholars use when studying Moro history. They are valuable to us because they provide an account of Moro rulers minus the racial bias of European narratives. While we are discussing these things, we need to think about three important questions. The first of which is to ask ourselves why these documents were made in the first place. Number two is how were they different from each other? And lastly, what is the extent of their role in our study of Moro history? With these in mind, let's get back to the show. Tarsilas are written genealogical accounts of important Muslim families. Royal Tarsilas, those possessed by the Moro sultans, have three primary functions. The first is to list down all the sultans that have ruled since the founding of the sultanate. The second is to establish a ruler's right to be sultan by tracing their lineage to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ through a Sharif ancestor. Lastly, they serve to elevate their prestige by showcasing the sultan's close relations with the older sultanates in the region. Since Tarsilas are updated by their caretakers, their authenticity isn't based on the age of the material they are written on, but the use of the Malay language in their writing. Khutbahs are the sermons delivered during congregational Friday prayer or Salatul Jum'ah. There are special khutbahs that are repeated during Friday prayer and annually during Eid al-Fitr, in the festival of breaking the fast, and Eid al-Adha, in the feast of sacrifice. They are written in Arabic, composed by the most educated men in Moro society, and traditionally include prayers for the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the first four caliphs or successors of the Prophet, and the reigning Muslim ruler. These khutbahs often contain more names than the Tarsilas, because the ulama who write them do not concern themselves with the political squabbles of royal succession. Once an individual's name and achievements have been written down in a khutbah, it would take a particularly brave imam or ulama to try and take them out. This means that khutbahs are more than just a way for Muslim leaders to preach Islamic values and organize communities for collective action. They are also a way to pass on historical and cultural knowledge to the next generation of Moros. Kitabs are a comparatively recent invention. They are booklets describing the character and achievements of all sultans who reigned in the past. The earliest known kitab was written by Haji Buto in 1904. His prestige as a leading Islamic figure to the Tausugs prompted later authors to derive their information from his work. Despite being the only source out of the three discussed in this video to include dates with the reigns of the sultans, information from Kitabs must be taken with a grain of salt. Accepting the information we get from these sources without considering their flaws is not ideal. Although the faithful preservation of Tarsilas by the Moros make them the foremost source of Moro historical facts, the lack of dates in reference to the events they mention, the removal or revision of certain events due to political intrigue, and their tendency to condense multiple events into one only make them useful for organizing the order in which events happen. Khutbahs, although exempt from political intrigue, are instruments of the religious institutions that made them. They are unable to provide a full and critical account of what happened, yet they are able to supplement the missing parts of the other sources. Kitabs offer a more in-depth account of the Moro sultans, accompanied by actual dates, yet their inconsistencies and sometimes contradictory information stem from the fact that they were made centuries after the events they attempt to narrate. These days, more records, artifacts, and written testimonials about the Moros from all over the world are being made accessible by foreign governments and institutions. Subjected to critical analysis, they can supplement the sources we have now to provide an even clearer picture of Moro history. These fragments of our distant past are a heritage we must treasure and protect. However, we must be careful not to paint an idealized yet false history. In an age filled with misinformation and false narratives, we must be critical to build a genuine national history that does justice to the people's experiences. With the best interests of everyone in mind, we're ending this episode by encouraging you, the viewer, to stand firm against historical revisionism and to advocate for its end by endorsing critical and inquisitive consumption of information online. Hi, I need you to help me out. Can you tell me what you want to learn about Moro history and culture down below? Down below.